Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I like to discuss an Express article from a few days ago reporting on the outrage from a select group of Tory MPs against Labour, once again reiterating that they would seek to tear down as many of the trade barriers which the extreme Tory Brexit erected as they are able to. The article reports a Tory Brexiteer saying that Labour cannot be trusted to keep Brexit safe. Splendid. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So it's interesting to read articles like this and then see comments from a small group of active rejoiners who frequently suggest that the Conservatives are the party most likely to reverse Brexit. You know, the latest was the news that because we're slowly edging back towards entry into Horizon, never mind that New Zealand has now joined the programme and lots of Conservative MPs are still pressuring Rishi Sunak to back out on it on short-sighted cost grounds. And you think to yourself, so how many Labour MPs are calling for us not to join Horizon then? Also worth noting that if you can find a steady stream of Conservative MPs, and you can find them both inside the government and on the backbenchers, who are going to cheerfully argue that Brexit should actually become more extreme still, and none on the Labour benches, you think to yourself, really? Which party is the most? I know their position may not be to everyone's taste, but which party is really going to be the one that moves us back? In fact, this latest Express article is able to quote 3 Tory MPs all arguing against any attempts to even rein back on the extreme Brexit which they engineered. You know, 3 Tory MPs who are not only not saying, oh, we may have gone a bit too far, but it's like, no, we haven't actually gone far enough. But we shall take a look at their claims regarding Labour and which are true and which are imagined. So our starter for 10 is Marco Longhi saying that there's no doubt that Labour would have us rejoin immediately. So he said, no doubt at all, Labour would have us rejoin immediately. Now, this is, of course, one of those good old political ambiguous statements. What does he mean exactly? Does he mean have us rejoin as in they would if they could, or have us rejoin in that we will be rejoining the EU, the second Labour form of government? The latter interpretation is, of course, impossible. It takes a great many years to join the EU, even if there is clear political will within the aspiring applicant. In fact, there has to be. If they mean that Labour would if they could, well, then that's largely a moot point because they can only do so with a public mandate, which means either a clear manifesto commitment, which isn't happening for this election at least, or another referendum, which is also not viable in the next few years. The article quotes Labour's Nick Thomas-Symonds as wanting to tear down unnecessary trade barriers with the EU. But what do they have against that? Isn't their argument for supporting the retained EU law bill that it would allow us to remove what they say are unnecessary regulations? So why would they also be opposed to unnecessary trade barriers? Unnecessary trade barriers are, after all, trade barriers are red tape. So unnecessary trade barriers is unnecessary red tape. It's the same argument. So it's like we're in favour of tearing down unnecessary red tape when it suits us. Oh, but we're totally against Labour saying they want to tear down unnecessary red tape. Are they really saying they want unnecessary trade barriers? In fact, why are they... these are supposedly free market capitalists, aren't they? Because all of these people are very much on the right of the party. They're free market capitalists, or so they say. Why are they supporting the idea of trade barriers at all? I thought they liked free trade. They then quote David Lammy saying that closer links with the EU are his number one priority. Again, what would they have against prioritising closer links with our neighbours and allies? Begs the question, and I accept no one's asked them this question, they should. Begs the question, who do they think we should prioritise closer links with? Normally, the easy answer to that is the United States, but it can't be the United States, as is usually the case, because they hate Joe Biden. And in particular, if Joe Biden wins the next presidential election as well, they absolutely can't say that we should prioritise. Because are they going to really say that Labour should prioritise closer relationships with Joe Biden's America? Well, they can't say that. So who should we be prioritising our links with? Who? By far and away, the largest economies in the world are the EU, China and the United States. Which one do they want the UK to eschew the EU for in terms of prioritising those relations? Can't be the United States, as I said, because they hate Biden. Can't be China, because Even their low-tax nodding dog Liz Truss has been having a pop at them recently. They're all attacking China at the moment. Who then? Might be worth a serious journalist asking them the question, who would you prioritise relations with? Because it seems pertinent. Who do these far-right Brexiteers think we should be prioritising in terms of international relations, if not the EU? Longy also tried to suggest that Keir Starmer tries to give the impression that he respects Brexit. Now, I'm going to have to stop him there and say, I've not actually heard him say that. He said that he respects the reasons that compelled lots of people to vote for it. He's also said he wants to make Brexit work, but that's not really the same thing as respecting it. As I keep saying, Starmer doesn't even try to gloss over his pro-Remain efforts. These ERG nutjobs keep bringing up that Starmer was behind efforts to seek a confirmatory people's vote. It's not like Starmer himself hides this. Whenever he talks at length about Labour's Brexit position, he brings it up himself. Granted, he's also talked a load of old twaddle about joining the single market not boosting economic growth. Now, okay, not as much as joining the customs union as well, but inevitable. If you drop standards controls with our most important export market, of course you will boost growth. How could it be argued that being able to sell more of our produce to the EU would not boost growth? So being fair, there is a sense in which these Tory MPs might fear Starmer's real intentions regarding Brexit, because you could say, well, he's saying this, that's clearly cobblers, so therefore he must have something else in mind. Fine, fair enough. That being said, should we look at what they want from Brexit? Because the Tory MPs named in this article, Marco Longy, David Jones, and the never knowingly correct or appropriate Jacob Rees-Mogg, all hate Brexit. That is, they hate the Brexit we have. We have left the EU, which was all the referendum was about. We have left the single market and customs union, which was the only other aspect of Brexit tacked onto the 2019 manifesto. Yet despite this all being done, they are still raging about their own government's plans to water down the retained EU law bill. Consider that it's been watered down from obliterating thousands of rules and regulations without impact assessments or parliamentary debate to obliterating merely hundreds of them. And they call this an act of Brexit betrayal. So are they really concerned that Labour's position on Brexit might end up being a great deal softer than they are currently saying? I don't think so, because even Sunak's position is far too soft for them. And yet, what has Sunak actually done to irritate them? He has agreed on a settlement for Northern Ireland. He's not implementing it yet, but he has agreed it in principle. He's leaving the implementation for Labour to deal with. He's agreed our involvement in Horizon, again on principle. We haven't done it yet, hasn't the final decision hasn't been made. But even Boris Johnson wanted that. And even this deal could still fail in the end because lots of Tories are arguing against the final terms. And Sunak has said, we're not going to obliterate thousands of rights and protections, only hundreds. Because what the ERG ultimately wanted of Brexit was not just leaving the EU. It was never about leaving the most sophisticated free trade area in the world to pursue unicorns in the Pacific. As party chair Greg Hans once wrote, joining the CPTPP was about making it harder for a future Labour government to negotiate a customs union with the EU. That's why we joined the CPTPP, principally from the Conservatives' point of view. It was about blocking a future Labour government from closer relations with the EU. Ultimately, what Brexit is to these people is a vehicle to deregulate the country. The EU standards, the EU, it represents regulation. That's what it is. It regularly strengthens standards and rights, workers' rights, civic rights, consumer rights, safety standards, environmental standards, food standards, and so on. It's a bulwark against Victorian slave drivers and corporate polluters. This is what the ERG hated about the EU and why they drove Brexit. What they fear of Labour is not that it will find a way to rejoin the EU, but that they will drive standards back up even outside the EU. They also fear that people might recognise that what they lost is being given back to them. That they see that what they lost was not really lost, but taken from them. And that they see who took it away. That being said, there is one thing in which I can partially agree with them. When they say Labour will seek to rejoin the EU by stealth, well, the last bit's right. Obviously, there's no way of rejoining without a very clear public mandate, for which there will have to be a very clear public debate. Apart from anything else, The EU would require it. But the stealth part's right. Many people supported Boris Johnson in 2019 on the promise of getting Brexit done. They were sick of Brexit dominating everything. They were sick of ministers ignoring their duties because they were working on Brexit, or so they supposed. What they didn't realise is the reason why Conservative ministers were allowing public services to fail is because they wanted them to fail. They thought it's because they were preoccupied with Brexit, right? So they wanted the divisive politics to stop. Absolutely right that what Labour are seeking to do is to dismantle the extreme Tory Brexit behind closed doors. Minimal fuss. They want to do what all governments do. Handle international relations quietly, away from the spotlight of tabloid interest, which only ever hampers diplomacy. Repairing our diplomatic relations, mending our continental agreements, lowering trade barriers. All of these things are very boring in practice, and they should be boring. Excitement in diplomacy never produces good results, usually ends up in war actually. So yes, Labour will want to proceed with stealth where Brexit's concerned, and the public will want them to. The public want Labour to fix the problems, but also show them how the NHS is getting better, how schools are getting more teachers, how crime is falling, how energy is getting cheaper, how the rivers and seas are getting cleaner, and how houses are being built again. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.